Hello everyone, welcome to the course Geotechnical Engineering 2. So in this particular lecture number 3, we will be discussing some of the institute tests that are there. Okay, let us continue to the course outline. So coming to the course outline, as I have stated, we will be discussing some of the methods of soil exploration and we will be performing certain tests to understand the soil type. So for that we have the different tests, say plate load test, the static cone penetration test, and then the dynamic cone penetration test, as well as the pressure meter test and some of the geophysical explorations as well. So all these are done and carried out to understand and prepare a detailed report on this particular type of soil. So finally, our main aim is to prepare a detailed soil exploration report, okay, after the site investigation. Clear? So let us now discuss the tests as well. So coming to the previous lecture, what we have discussed, we have initially understood what is the open excavation methods, and then we have understood what do we mean by boring, and then we have understood what do we mean by sampling. Okay, so in case of open excavation methods, we have understood the two different types, that is pits and trenches, and then the drifts and shafts. And then we have understood the different methods of boring, that is auger boring, wash boring, rotary boring, and then the percussion boring. So these are the different techniques of boring, how we prepare the sample. Okay, so these we have discussed. And finally, we have understood the sampling procedures, that is the disturbed sample and the undisturbed sample. So we have understood what are the outline in the soil exploration. Let us now try to understand more in detail. So coming to the in situ test, say the laboratory test. So what do we mean by the laboratory test as well? So in case of laboratory test, we make use of small size sample. We prepare the small size samples that we obtain from the boreholes. Initially, in any particular soil ground, we try to dig a borehole and then we collect the soil sample. So that is what we do. We collect these samples and take them to the laboratory for testing to obtain the index as well as engineering properties. So main thing, it depends on the quality. It depends on the quality of the undisturbed sample that we are taking. If the soil is getting disturbed, that means it is actually, the properties are actually changing. So that is why we need to make sure that we collect the undisturbed sample for the testing in the laboratory. Okay. Apart from that, furthermore, for obtaining any undisturbed samples from the non-cohesive granular soils, for suppose if there are any non-cohesive granular soils, if we have to collect a soil sample from such type of soil, it is very much difficult. Okay, because they are not very much cooperative for embedment of any type of equipment. So to dig a borehole in such type of soils, it is very much difficult. So that is why it is very much difficult to get an undisturbed sample from a granular soil type. Clear? Now, therefore, in common practice, we rely on laboratory tests only for cohesive soils. That means say clay, silt, such type of soils, we just try to make sure that we obtain certain sample of undisturbed nature. Okay, even in that case also, sand soils are not at all supportive as undisturbed nature. Clear? Now, coming to the field tests. So in case of field tests, these have a greater advantage that these can be carried out at the field itself, and at that particular location itself we can get the properties of the soil with an undisturbed nature. Okay, that means the soil will be undisturbed in state and we can obtain the actual properties. If it is getting disturbed, that means the properties are actually changing. So if it is undisturbed, we can acquire the actual properties of the soil, that is index as well as engineering properties. Clear? So that is the advantage of field test. Coming to where the subsoil strata are generally essential means, in case of non-cohesive soils, if you look at this, the bias is more definitely towards the field test. That means whenever we are considering any non-cohesive soils for testing, that means the bias is towards the field test. That means we must perform field test only in such type of soils. Clear? Furthermore, the data from the field test is used for empirical, but it is time tested correlations to predict settlements of the foundations. That means whatever data that we gather from the field test, that is completely used for empirical calculations. Okay, that is used for empirical calculations, but it is time tested correlations to predict settlement of foundation. That means we use all these data to make sure that we understand the settlements of any foundations, because ultimately the building load that is there, it is coming to the foundation, and from the foundation it is distributed to the soil. So that is why we need to understand the settlements. So all the tests that are performed are required in such a way that we understand the settlements in case of any foundation. Clear? So that is the advantage of the field test. Now let us try to understand the field test. So if you look at this, the most commonly used field test in case of subsurface investigation are, the first one is penetrometer test, okay, and then we have the pressure meter test, and then we have vane shear test, which we have already discussed in our unit 1, and then the other one is the plate load test, which is one of the most commonly used test. It has its own importance, okay, we will be discussing later on. And apart from that, we have some other methods that are geophysical methods. Out of all these, okay, penetrometer test is one of the most commonly used test, in which we have two different types, that is standard penetration test and the other one is cone penetration test. Okay, in generally we have two methods, that is standard penetration test and cone penetration test. In case of cone penetration also, there are two different approaches. The first one is the static cone penetration test, which is written as SCPT test, and then the other one is dynamic cone penetration test, and it is written as DCPT. Okay, this is just for our convenience, and it is most commonly used in practice. Now, so let us now try to understand the standard penetration test more in detail. So if you look at the diagram, this is a typical diagram of the standard penetration test, how we carry out. In this particular diagram, this is the ground level where we dig a borehole. Okay, this dotted line that is represented here is a borehole, and this is the sampling or the drilling rod in which the sampler is placed so that we can collect the sample through it. So this is a drilling rod which is attached to an anvil here. Okay, and this is in turn attached to some arrangement that is attached to a hammer. Okay, because since it is a standard penetration test, some hammer load is given for driving this penetration into it. Clear? So this is actually given to a normal hand pulley, but in general case also a mechanical device may be attached to it. Clear? So this is the total arrangement. Let us look at more detail how the procedure is done and how the sample is collected. Clear? Now, so a borehole is initially to be dug, as shown here, the dotted line. The borehole is initially to be dug up to the required depth. And then what we have to do, there is a split spoon sampler that is present here. In the sample borehole that is there, we need to place the split spoon sampler. Along with this drilling rod, we place a split spoon sampler, and to it there is a split barrel present inside the circumference. Okay, along the inner surface there is a split barrel that is present. So what we need to do, we need to immerse it up to the required depth. Okay, along the borehole. First we need to dug the borehole, and then we need to immerse it completely. Later what we need to do, we need to make sure that we give certain amount of blows with the help of this hammer, so that the sampler is driven to the required depth. Okay, so in general this is given by a driving force with the help of at a distance of 450 mm height. Okay, and then the hammer is dropped with a free fall. So it is having a weight of 65 kg and the free fall height is generally 750 mm. Okay, or 75 centimeter. Okay, so this hammer free fall will be 75 centimeter from this level, and it is having a weight of 65 kg, so that the entire sampler will be driven through the soil. Okay, so that is the procedure till here. Now, apart from that, if we look at here, we need to collect certain amount of data. That means whenever I am driving, I need to collect the number of blows that are taking for every 150 mm penetration. Okay, for every 150 mm penetration, I need to record the number of blows that has taken. So obviously I'll record that. And similarly, for every 300 meter also I required the data. That means for first 150 mm I have recorded the number of blows. Similarly for the next 50. So total is 300 mm I have recorded the data. So if you look at here, in a similar way we need to proceed till the end at what level we require. And the last 30 centimeter or last 300 mm of the penetration is whatever recorded is our required data, and it is given by the n value, and it is given as the n value of that particular depth. Okay, so if I am digging at say 750 mm, so from that 750 mm, the above two readings, say 150 and 150, those two data are recorded and added up, and the sum of all these blows for that last 300 mm will be my n value. Clear? That is the number of blows. Now, furthermore, the number of blows for the first 150, for say if I have got the readings only for the first 150, that 150 blows reading is known as the seating drive. Okay, that 150 blows reading is known as the seating drive. Clear? And furthermore, one thing we need to remember regarding this type of test, that is, it is one of the most commonly used in situ test, and then this is generally used for cohesionless soils, okay, to perform in a very convenient way. And finally, this is extremely useful, and it is used for the determination of the relative density of a soil as well as the angle of shearing resistance, because we require angle of shearing resistance to find out the shear stress. So this test will be very much helpful to find out this value. Clear? Now, furthermore, just I have given the diagram for our representation. So once we immerse this split spoon sampler and we place the sampler, okay, so we need to remove this split spoon sampler, and then we will detach it from the collar so that we collect the sample. We detach it from the collar so that we require that sample. Okay, ultimately we require the cylindrical sample for testing in the laboratory once again. Okay, so that is how we detach it from the collar which is in turn attached to the drilling rods. Okay, now, so the split barrel, as I have stated, there is some inner circumferential thing, that is the split barrel. It is disconnected from the cutting shoe and the coupling. Okay, inside there is a small arrangement in such a way that it is connected to a shoe sort of arrangement, cutting shoe sort of arrangement, so that it will drive to the soil completely. Okay, and then there is another one, that is coupling, which will hold and which will try to rotate this sampler. Okay, so we have to detach it from those two. Clear? And then furthermore, the soil sample which is collected inside the split barrel is generally used, okay, whatever the split barrel that we used is generally used in such a way that the main purpose is it makes sure the soil that is collected is in its natural condition. Okay, that means whatever moisture content that is present in the soil, it remains as it is. Okay, it is remaining intact. So we are not changing the moisture content, we are exactly getting the field soil itself. So that is the main advantage of this. In even some cases we may use some sort of wax coating around the soil. Okay, so we may drive some wax sort of thing through this split barrel, so that the soil, that is the soil sample that is there, it is covered by the wax when it is completely dug at that. Okay, now, so that is what I have said. So the sample is actually sealed with the molten wax in some instances. Okay, so this is done with the help of the split spoon sampler, which is having a split barrel inside. Clear? And furthermore, in general, the standard penetration test is conducted for every 0.75 meter. Okay, it is conducted for every 0.75 meter of vertical intervals. Okay, that means in the borehole we need to carry out this for every 0.75 meter intervals. But in some instances it may be also extended to 1.5 meter also. It may be extended to 1.5 meter depth also, if the borehole is very large. That means whenever we are digging any borehole, if it is convenient to dig a large borehole, then we can go and measure up to 1.5 meter also. Clear? Now, furthermore, if there is any presence of disturbances in the soil mass, because soil is a non-homogeneous thing, okay, so that is why if I am digging a borehole, there may be some boulders or rocks in between, or I may arrive at a bedrock itself in some instances. So in such cases we need to do certain precautions, and there is some difficulty in collecting the soil sample. Okay, so that is why in such case the n value should be recorded for the first 300 mm penetration. In general, if we arrive at any such situations, we generally go for the first 300 mm penetration, and we correspondingly take the number of blows as the n value. Clear? Now, so we need to halt the test. Whenever I am performing test, I may have to halt the test at certain point of time because of certain disturbances, as well as I need to start bore logging the data. Okay, that means if you look at here, whenever if say for 50 blows are recorded for 150 mm penetration, that means for 150 mm penetration itself, for the first 150 mm penetration itself, if it takes 50 blows, then it is very much difficult. Then we need to halt it. Or even for say 300 mm penetration, if I arrive at 100 blows, then also I must halt. Okay. Or even for any successive number of blows, for say 10 successive number of blows, there is no change, that means there is no penetration of this drill hole, okay, or the sampler, then also we must halt the test. Okay, and we must proceed to the other location. Clear? Now coming to the correction in value, because we are trying to externally apply some load on this particular sampler using a hammer of 65 kg and a free fall of 75 centimeter. So what we need to do, that means the soil is getting disturbed, that means we may not arrive at the exact number of blows that is required. Okay, so that is why there must be certain corrections considering the surrounding soil that is present as well as the overburden soil that is present. Okay, so all these aspects come. So that is why if you look at here, as I have stated, these have to be corrected, but this generally occurs in case of cohesionless soils, for example sand. Okay, so that is why empirical correlations have to be done based on certain design charts also. Okay. Now, so IS 2131 recommends that the N value will be corrected for two effects. That is, the first one is the effect of overburden pressure, the other one is the effect of dilatancy. Okay, the first is the effect of overburden pressure and the other one is effect of dilatancy. So we will look at these effects and corrections, how it is carried out. Coming to the correction for overburden pressure, since the confining pressure, that means whatever confining pressure means the surrounding soil that is present, increases with depth, that means whenever the depth increases, the overburden pressure of the or the self weight of the soil will increase. So that is why N values have to be corrected at those particular depths. Okay, so these are generally underestimated in case of shallow depths. That means we are underestimating these in case of shallow depths, and the N values at larger depths are overestimated. Now, to allow this, the N values are recorded from the field test. Okay, so we have to consider the overburden pressure, and these are to be corrected to the standard effective overburden pressure. Instead of the overburden pressure, because it is different at different intervals, we have to correct it for the standard effective overburden pressure. Okay, and coming to the corrected N values, it is given by Gibbs and Halls in 1957 for dry and moist clean sand, and it was given as NC, that is corrected value of the number of blows, is given by NR, that is the recorded, which is multiplied by 350 by sigma naught bar by 70. Okay, where sigma naught bar is the effective overburden pressure in kilonewton per meter square. So later it has been revised by Peck and Bazara in 1969. Okay, these are the commonly used correlations here. Okay, so this is given for effective overburden less than 71.8 kilonewton per meter square or more than 71.8 kilonewton per meter square, it is given as this parameter. Okay, that means if it is not equal to 71.8 kilonewton per meter square, if it is equal, then you can simply take it as NC is equals to NR. That means the corrected value of N is equal to the recorded value of N. Otherwise, in any case, you have to use this particular formula. Now, as I have stated, where NC is the corrected value of N and NR is the observed value of N, and sigma naught is the effective overburden pressure in kilonewton per meter square. Okay. Furthermore, coming to the correction for dilatancy, so whenever this particular NR, okay, after correcting the value in overburden pressure, if it exceeds 15 in case of saturated fine sands or silts, then we have to go for this correction of dilatancy. Okay, so in general, IS 2131 1981 incorporates this Terzaghi and Peck recommendations that the dilatancy correction whenever NC recorded in the overburden pressure, that is NR here. Okay, if it is greater than 15, then we must go for some correction for dilatancy using these expression, that is NC is equals to 15 plus 0.5 NR minus 15. Clear? where NR is the fire and correction value to be used in the design charts. Clear? Now, furthermore, if it is less than 15, then you can simply take it NC is equals to NR. And if NR is greater than 15, it is an indication of a dense sand case. It is an indication of the dense sand case. And in such case of soils, we can go for fast rate of application of shear through the blows of any drop of hammer. Okay. So now, coming to the other one, the last and most important one, consequently a transient increase, that means a transient increase in the shear resistance will occur, okay, leading to the SPT value higher than the actual one. Actual value, whatever actual we get, this SPT value will be higher than this actual one. Okay, now. So these are the assignment questions that I have given here. As usually, just try to understand them so that you can get a clear understanding about the concept. Okay. So similarly, I have given numerical problem also to solve this. You can simply go through the formula as the depth is given and the N value is given 48 here, and the density of the sand was 4. So simply you can find out the overburden pressure as density into the depth at which you are finding out. So you will get sigma naught dash, and use this 48 as your N value, that is NR recorded. So you can correct for overburden pressure using the expression previously. Okay. So in the upcoming lecture, we will try to discuss the cone penetration test, which is one of the other tests that is there in penetrometer tests. Okay. So thank you very much. I hope you have understood this lecture very well. Thank you. Have a nice day.